This week, think before you pink. It's October and pink washing is in full swing, but here are several reasons why you should abstain from the cancer fanfare and how you can really battle the big C's, corporations and cancer. Next up, Lee Camp turns tragedy into comedy, and finally, California's bitter fight against Nestle. But first, paint a picture with me. Let me paint a picture, a scene, but I need your help. Where you are sitting or standing, laying or pacing, close your eyes. Imagine a day, week, and time not so different than this one in kind. Maybe spring pushes flowers like kids pushing pedals on bikes in the downhill. Or snow wisps and spirals of wind hitting windows. Safe on the inside, you gaze from a cozy malaise and think, oh, the first snow fell early. But shrug off the worry, because now we have reason to ring in new seasons, or fall leaves collecting from bare trees rejecting their life they no longer sustain. A cool wind through warm days heralding changed ways from shorts to pants, a summer's fleeting romance. Now picture this scene. Without the ways or the means to stop and enjoy it, imagine knowing it's summer, but the bars block the sun and your scars grow from simmer to boil, the toil of wretched forgetment. Contentment of those who twisted the truth, spew lies like newspaper headlines, and you, stuck in a cell because this is a drug, not a medicine, thug, do your time. Or perhaps you were one of the many who saw that the few who would strike at the any, and silence is violence, so you stood up and screamed. Now how about this scene? A courtroom with lawyers like TV made bite-sized believers in justice. Now dinner is served. Justice is late, start without it. Free speech is reason for treason, your right to stand up and fight a green light, to shove you in places, dark spaces meant to forget, shut off the lights and let you rot. Not admissible. Switch the rules. Nonviolent activists jailed, but it's high time we whitewash these war crimes. Empires stand. Raise your right hand. Do you swear to always remain a servant enslaved? Keep faith in the name of your CEO. Say, can you see? By the dawn's early light, these dissenters detained, a folk devil made, a life and a future now maimed. The psychopaths saved from the trip of the run of their own damn game, but somebody's gotta fall. And so we all dive, Roger that, over and out, and fuck. Here we're now stuck, a quagmire, a martyr's sick pyre, burn, baby, burn. A sick man who chooses a meal over medicine, a mom who chooses to yield to the system and let her kid go, because she can't afford to clothe them or get them a home, so fuck her. But don't, because we see how that goes, and birth control's evil, so sit with your legs crossed and listen, little kiddies. Uncle Sam wants to tell you a story of a country so filled with freedom and glory that nearly 1 in 30 wear chains. So let this sink into your brains. Don't be poor, don't be black, don't be left, don't look back, keep your eyes down. We're always right. We'll tell you when it's time to fight. Don't come here looking for fair, these are the rules. Now learn them. Big Brother's watching, we ain't above stalking, so keep your minds close to our fold. Don't open a book that tells you to question. Don't question the books that we burn, the lies that you learn. There's a hole, an abyss that's just waiting to swallow you whole. The ones who don't follow these rules. So imagine with me, wherever you are, open your eyes. What you see in your room, maybe outside in cities on green grass, imagine, because that's where the fear clutches you dear and says, don't let go of your riches, the few simple coins, wrap me in apathy, keep me so warm. Summer is sweeter when no one can reach us. Let's run away from reality. No, there's a strike at the fear factory. Common sense hits the streets because now you imagine you're free. Apathy can't take hold of the soul that knows it isn't free. And once you have thought what it might be and could be, when you know what empires do to the good ones like you, imagine a life lived free. Then you don't need me to paint a picture because you've already seen. From tweets to marching in the streets, this is Act Out. Welcome to Act Out. I'm Eleanor Goldfield, and this is your tipping point. So even as October teeters out, you've no doubt seen or heard something to do with Breast Cancer Awareness Month. Now, first of all, I take issue with these fucking commemorative months. Black History Month? No, sorry. Every month is Black History Month. Breast Cancer Awareness Month? Yeah, good idea. That'll save your tits when you just ignore them the other 11 months. In short, these months have nothing to do with commemorating anyone or curing diseases. They're about raising money. Which, that would be fine if you pour a good amount of that money raised into legit research and saving lives. Less so if you use more than $600,000 of it to pay your CEO, which, by the way, is $100K more than the CEO of the Red Cross makes, an organization 10 times the size of Susan G. Komen Foundation. And even less so still if you spend some of that money to sue other organizations that use the phrase "for the cure." Yeah, about $1 million a year from Susan G. Komen goes to suing other nonprofits who use "for the cure" in their name or advertising. Or how about partnering with companies like KFC and Mike's Hard Lemonade, because nothing says we care about your health like fried antibiotic and hormone-infused animal flesh, and alcohol laced with 30 grams of sugar plus whatever natural flavors are. Made of strawberries, beaver ass, what the hell is lemon flavoring? Anyway, believe it or not, it gets worse. It does get worse. Last year, during Breast Cancer Awareness Month, the Susan G. Komen Foundation announced that it was partnering with Baker Hughes, one of the world's largest oil field services companies. As part of this partnership, Baker Hughes painted 1,000 drill bits pink and shipped them to various fracking sites so they could do their part, do their bit, and raise awareness while spewing carcinogens into the air, drilling chemicals into the ground, and ironically, of course, giving people cancer. Yeah, you certainly are doing your bit, guys. After all, you gotta make sure that people keep getting cancer, otherwise, what is there to be aware about? I mean, fuck, I'm kind of surprised that this year they haven't announced that they're partnering with Marlboro and coming out with 1,000 packs of pink fucking cigarettes. But this Komen campaign for money isn't unusual or specific to just their organization. As Peggy Orenstein, a breast cancer survivor, wrote in a 2013 New York Times article, now you'd be hard-pressed to find a major illness without a logo, a wearable ornament, and a roster of consumer product tie-ins. Heart disease has its red dress. Testicular cancer has its yellow bracelet. During Movember, men are urged to grow their facial hair to spark conversation and raise awareness of prostate cancer and testicular cancer. Spark conversation? What the fuck? And this speaks to the fact that they aren't really too interested in a cure. That's why it's Breast Cancer Awareness Month, not Let's Fucking Get Rid of Cancer Month. It's about getting a message out there so that more people will donate. It's about smiling women in pink shirts that read Breast Cancer Survivor. It's about NFL teams wearing pink while they beat the shit out of one another. It's about drilling a hole into the goddamn earth. In a sick, twisted irony, a facepalm-worthy attempt at showing solidarity with the people whose stories you'll co-opt, but whose lives you're really not concerned with saving. As Samantha King, Associate Professor of Kinesiology at Queen's University and author of Pink Ribbons, Inc., said, these campaigns all have a similar superficiality in terms of the response they require from the public. They're divorced from any critique of healthcare policy or the politics of funding biomedical research. They reinforce a single-issue competitive model of fundraising. And they whitewash illness. We're made aware of a disease, yet totally removed from the challenging and often devastating realities of its sufferers. Even the money that does end up going to research doesn't end up going to the right kind. For example, Susan G. Komen and the American Cancer Society push mammograms as a vital part of early detection for breast cancer. Only problem is, that's not factually accurate. In fact, in February of last year, the British Medical Journal released findings from the largest study on mammography to date. The results? Annual mammography in women aged 40 to 59 does not reduce mortality from breast cancer. That's pretty fucking succinct. In fact, an earlier study in the same journal found that it can actually do you harm, including the kind of harm inherent in being radiated by a machine that puts out as much radiation as 1,000 chest x-rays, all the while squeezing the hell out of your breasts, which can also cause any present cancer cells to spread. And finally, mammograms oftentimes result in false positives, putting you in the position of attacking your body with surgeries, more radiation, and a bunch of pills you don't need. But Komen and the ACS stand by this clearly bullshit technology and obsess over the early detection narrative for the simple reason that they don't want to find a cure. MedUp, an organization that focuses on metastatic breast cancer, meaning The cancer's moved beyond the breast, and there's only a 24% chance of living beyond 5 years, aka you're gonna die. MedUp held a die-in on Capitol Hill last week in order to push lawmakers to put more money towards later-stage cancer, as opposed to pouring money into early detection, which makes for good posters, but does little to actually save lives. 40,000 women and men die a year of breast cancer in the US. And guess what? That's only breast cancer. Cancer that has stayed in the breast isn't fatal. It's when it spreads beyond the breast that you have a problem. Well, you don't hear too much about that in Pink for the Cure ads. No, and you will continue to not hear about it in breast cancer ads. As with anything in this crooked corporatocracy, facts mean little, money means everything. And as MedUp puts it on their site, too often breast cancer charities, in a desperate attempt to fund their programs, partner with corporations whose fundraising campaigns sexualize our disease, or worse, run their own sexploitative fundraising campaigns. Campaigns like Save the Tatas reduce women to their body parts and ignore that the goal of treatment should be to save the woman, not their breasts. And if you wanted to cling to that early detection, how about you suggest cancer-fighting foods as opposed to cancer-causing ones? Just a thought. So to join the fight against pink-washing, corporate cancer campaigns and actual cancer, rethink Pink and check out medup.org and thinkbeforeyouPink.org. And for more information on alternative treatments such as cannabis oil, well, my dears, Google that shit. And I say Google that shit with a lot of love for alternative medicines, but we have to shift gears now because it's time for a laugh. Which incidentally, I do hear is also good for preventing cancer. When it comes to creative activism, I'd say one of the most difficult things to do is turn tragedy into comedy. Incorporating mass shootings, climate change, war, poverty, famine, lack of health care and education, incorporating that into an honest, straightforward newscast is one thing. But making those things funny, that's a whole nother fucking challenge. And perhaps even more challenging is digging into the equal parts boring and mysterious layers of corporatocracy, pulling out the most important, juicy bits, and turning them into comedy. I actually think I'd rather attempt this intricate money origami piece, which is actually pretty badass. But turning the corporatocracy into comedy is something that Lee Camp and the Redacted Tonight team does every week. And last week, Lee sat down with me to talk about his approach to both comedy and tragedy, activism in the entertainment industry, and life on stage and in the newsroom. Take a look. What came first for you, activism or comedy?
Comedy, definitely. I wanted to be a comedy writer since I was like 12, and then I finally started performing at like 17. My stand-up comedy was very observational at first, very Seinfeldian at first, and then it grew, and I became both interested in political comedians, but also more interested in politics and what was going on in the world. I feel like my true education, or at least a lot of it, came after college when I started reading the important books that you don't really read in college. So.
Well, then what flipped the switch? If it wasn't a book that you read in college, what got you to start listening to political comedians and paying attention to politics?
I was molested by Henry Kissinger. It was awkward, and I've never gotten over it.
I'm so sorry, but you guys heard it first.
I don't know. It was a bit of a slow progression over a year or two. I just started doing more activism, and I mean, if I point to one moment, and it certainly was not one moment, but one moment that definitely sticks out was a very small handful of activists in Texas. And I, in my own small way, helped stop a death row inmate from being executed. Now, I give them 99% of the credit, but I was in New York at the time, and I was, posting about it and stuff, but what does that do? And I then called the governor of Texas, which was Rick Perry at the time, and it was days until this guy was going to be executed. And unlike just about every death row inmate you've ever heard of, the prosecution admitted this guy had not killed anyone. He'd been in a car, he was driving, his friend got out, got in a fight, killed someone. They were going to put the driver to death who had nothing to do with it. And in Texas, that's legal because it's called the law of parties. You were around someone that committed murder. So they were going to execute him, and I called and they did the same thing. Oh, we'll add you to the tally saying don't execute this guy. And it kind of drove me nuts. I was like, there's got to be some way I can at least annoy these people a little more. And so I called the next day, didn't say I'd called before, and pretended to be a filmmaker, made up a fake studio and all this info and basically got her to believe that I was this film studio and wanted to do a documentary on the death of Kenneth Foster. And she puts me through the press secretary. I give her the whole thing and I say, we want an interview with the governor. And she says, well, it's maybe a possibility. When would you want this? And I'm like, well, Kenneth Foster has to be dead. So let's wait till he's dead and then we can do the interview. And she's like, okay, well, I'll bring it to the governor's attention. How do we get in touch with you? And I was like, well, the movie email will be up soon. It's bloodontexashands.com or info at. And so there's this long, awkward pause, and then she takes down the information, and that was the last I heard about it. But I don't doubt that the press secretary's job is to bring information like that to the governor. So I think that pressure, along with a lot of other pressure, is what ultimately made Rick Perry commute this guy's sentence. And Rick Perry murdered more people than Bush did as governor. So this was not a guy who was big into commuting death row inmates. And when I heard that the sentence had been commuted, I remember feeling immense excitement and immense burden of oh fuck, a very small number of people can make a difference. A very small number of people can save a man's life. And it really puts that fire into you of the little thing I do, the little choices I make can make a larger significant difference. And I feel like from then on out I was a pretty regular activist. I don't know, active activist.
An active activist. I like that. Some people will say, well, I don't put my activism into my art because I like to keep them separate. Why did you decide to combine them, or was there even a moment where you decided that, or was it just kind of automatic that you would combine comedy and activism?
I had just had enough with ticket sales. And I wanted to slow everything down and just decrease the number of people that were forwarding and looking at my stuff. And it's worked like a charm. Not
as much as it's worked for me.
I didn't see any other way around it. I was bored by the stuff I was doing on stage. I got to a point that I didn't care if I alienated a club book or a comedy club book, and it's tough to really know how often you haven't been booked somewhere because you were talking politics. I do know that after I was on Fox News and called them a parade of propaganda, my entire college touring schedule dried up immediately almost. And I was fine with that, but at the same time, I think it was pretty direct cause and effect. It was like these colleges, now when they Googled me, saw that clip, were like, oh, we don't want a political guy. And so I do know a lot of doors closed, but at the same time, I was doing something I cared about. It's like, I think at least the people that do what we do, activism with art, I think most of them are kind of like, fuck it all. I don't care. This is what needs to be said, and I'll say it.
So why is it so important to you to make that trade-off? And so, and then in turn, how does that make you feel about the comedy industry as it stands today?
I mean, there's a lot of shit out there. There is. I guess that goes with a lot of art forms. There's a lot of shit out there. There's a lot of good stuff out there too. But I do think there's a certain line. It's funny how what people think is offensive, what people think is edgy, because people will say, like in the opening monologue to Amy Schumer on SNL this week, she did a joke about how she had to wash her niece's vagina, and I'm sure people, she's talking to the nation and talking about washing her niece's vagina, and I'm sure that they were like, that's really edgy. She's super edgy. But in our day and age, it's like, that's not really that edgy. That's what most comedians do, and if you were to turn on Comedy Central most times of the day, 85% of the jokes are going to be about vaginas in some form or another, or at least dicks. So I don't find that edgy. I think what's edgy in terms of people aren't going to book you and stuff is insulting, politics, going after certain political ideas, going after religion sometimes, although sometimes even that's become cool, and going after the things we take for granted, like working all day in a job you hate and how we've been indebted to make that happen, And so I think it's that type of stuff is what should be called edgy. It's not, but it's like that's the stuff that stops you from getting late night shows. That's why I'm not on, I was going to say Letterman, but he's gone. Seth Meyers every night.
At the end of your show, you say keep fighting, and of course you work with a lot of different organizations, and you speak on a lot of different topics. But let's say I'm like the average American who is either on the fence or on the other side of the fence, and like thinks activism is just as scary of a word as feminism. How do you even start fighting in order to keep fighting? Like what's like the first step?
Well, if you're one of these people that finds, these words scary, activism and feminism, I think the hope is that my show would draw you in with simply the comedy. And so you kind of don't realize that you're being, you're accepting that feminism is cool and that activism is cool, at least long enough to watch the show because you're laughing and enjoying it. And I think that if it were just me talking like I am right now, straightforward, I might lose people. And that's why you and I talk about art a lot and different ways of appealing to people that wouldn't necessarily watch this stuff. But in terms of first steps, I think people should not be overwhelmed, because I think there's a tendency to just be like, well, the world's fucked. What do? I can't take out my composting. The fucking environment's dying. Like, who gives a fuck? People should find something that they care about the most, a smaller issue, and tackle it. Some people fully devote themselves to the local food movement and to getting farmers markets in a lot of areas, and that is their life. And I think that's wonderful. I think we need people to be kind of localized like that.
Right, and as Chris Hedges talks about in his book, like the thing that's really going to save us are these communities coming together on a smaller scale and creating these alternatives. And you see that with climate camps in Europe, like people creating these alternative societies as they're trying to dismantle capitalism. So, looking into the future here, you had a Moment of Clarity book where it was the rants from your very popular YouTube series, Moment of Clarity, and I understand you have another book coming out of the intro rants from Redacted Tonight.
Yeah, we're gonna put out another book of those opening rants, and it is titled. Do you have a title by chance that I could use?
I'll get my people on that immediately.
Yeah, no, I haven't titled it yet, but it just needs to be put together. So hopefully I will be presenting that soon. And then the other big thing is we are doing a big live show in New York that's not going to be like the TV show. It's going to be stand-up comedy, because luckily me and all of us on Redacted Tonight are stand-up comedians. And so we're going to do a cool big night. It's looking like it's likely going to be free tickets and free drink, and November 20th at Caroline's. I got you with a free drink, huh? And it should be just like an amazing night. I'm hoping so.
For more on Lee Camp, check out leecamp.net, and you can catch Redacted Tonight every Friday at 8 p.m. Eastern on RT, and thereafter on YouTube at youtube.com/redactedtonight. Now, moving on, let's head to the front lines in California, where activists battle the bottle in a high and dry lawsuit against corporate greed. You may remember an earlier episode when we called out Nestle for bottling water in California. The state that has been experiencing extreme drought for the past 4 years. Well, despite the work of thousands of activists, the shitfucks at Nestle don't seem to care that they're literally sucking California dry. In fact, Nestle CEO Tim Brown had this to say when asked if Nestle had any plans to stop or even curtail California bottling. Absolutely not. In fact, if I could increase it, I would. Wow. I wonder if he eats endangered species for breakfast or just enjoys killing them to watch them die. Anyway, that asshole aside, despite this blatant sociopathy and little to no support from government, activists aren't giving up. In fact, they're kicking it up a notch. This past Tuesday, a coalition of the Center for Biological Diversity, the Story of Stuff Project, and the California Courage Campaign Institute filed suit against the U.S. Forest Service for allegedly allowing Nestle to bottle water from California's San Bernardino National Forest with a permit that expired 27 years ago. Yeah, apparently the permit from the U.S. Forest Service, thank you, Thank you again, expired in 1988, yet Nestle continues to pump about 68,000 gallons of water out of the forest every day. And if you're thinking, well, the U.S. Forest Service must be getting wads of cash for their complicity in this shit, well, you'd be wrong. They get $524 a year. That's 524. If you consider how much Nestle makes off of their bottling, it's clear that we are actually literally subsidizing their environmental destruction. And meanwhile, the U.S. Forest Service has spent the past 27 years, I actually don't know what the fuck they've been doing. Not once have they reviewed the permit since it expired. And yet, if I try to get onto a plane with an expired license, I'm detained for an hour and asked if I've ever talked to anyone with dark hair. This bullshit is simply a case of extreme neglect and corporate strong-arming. And these groups, plus thousands of Californians, are fucking sick of it. With this lawsuit, the three groups are calling on the courts to immediately shut down the 4-mile-long pipeline that siphons water from the Strawberry Creek in the San Bernardino National Forest and directs it to the Nestle bottling plant in Ontario, California. Furthermore, they demand that the U.S. Forest Service conduct an environmental review due to the immense impact on both local habitats and wildlife. To show your support and spread the word about this incredibly important fight, visit couragecampaign.org and storyofstuff.org, where you can also see a mini documentary about this fight for water, for people, and planet. And finally this week, while you're exercising your digital activism, check out our Facebook page to get a direct link to this petition to stop the TPP. Activists are already almost at their goal of 20,000 signatures, but the more force we put behind this, the harder it is for Congress to ignore. And if you're watching this for the first time and really have no idea what the fuck TPP is, I can recommend our guest Lee Camp's latest segment on the corporate coup, or indeed, some of our own. And with that, revolutionaries, I'll be signing off until next week. Thank you so much for watching. Please spread and share this show with all of your friends, foes, and people you don't know. And check out the last slide on this episode to see all the sites that I mentioned. There will also be a link to help support Occupy.com and the delicious dissent delivered daily thanks to donations like yours. It is a 501c3, so anything that you can contribute is tax deductible and hugely appreciated. Be sure to follow us on Twitter, like us on Facebook, and subscribe on YouTube. From the really fucking sunny, I apologize for my flubs, Devil's Den, good night and act out.